Well, hey, thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk. And of course, for everyone that's in the room, thank you so much for taking the time to take moments out of your life to advocate for animals. It's always, I know for many of us that have been doing this for a long time, and many of you have been doing this for a long time, this is just, of course, this is the right thing to do. But you also have to realize, like, not many people are willing to do this. And so it means the world. Whenever I kind of start an advocacy thing and really talk about lobbying and really talk about any work that we can do on behalf of animals, one of the things I always kind of resort back to is how many of you, and I can actually see you, so you're welcome to raise your hands. How many of you guys practice yoga or have done yoga? Okay, so I don't practice as much as I should, but I do like to go every once in a while. And I remember the first time that I went to a yoga class, and it was kind of one of those classes that was more about working out than it was actually about getting into a meditative state and really practicing something. And I then took another yoga class, and one of the things that the teacher talked about first was setting an intention, and setting an intention for your practice here today. If it's yoga, or setting your intention for a school year, or setting your intention for going into your job. One of the things that I like to ask people, set an intention for your advocacy. This campaign and legislation is not done overnight. I'm hoping in Portland, and I'm hoping in New York City as well, that these bills to help animals, in particular to ban fur, will happen quickly. But please keep in mind that this is going to take work. And one of the things that I like to do is ask all of you to take a second and just think about, what is your intention and who is your intention for? And so for me, it's this guy. This is Dew. He's my boy. He's 125 pounds. He used to be a Portland resident with me during law school when I went to Lewis and Clark. He is my rock. He has gotten me through the worst times and also the best times in my life. And what I know is that I would do anything in the world to prevent him from suffering, including spending a small fortune on a recent surgery he had to have to save his life. But if anyone were to harm him, the things I would go do to prevent that from happening are endless. And yet, one of the things that I realized when I was going through law school and I started doing animal advocacy is that he is no different than any other animal that is suffering in a cage or in a trap or on a factory farm or in a puppy mill. His life matters just as much as they do, and the fact that they don't have a name doesn't make any difference. And so for tonight, and also for the next couple weeks and the next couple months, when you guys are getting ready to really take on something that is unbelievably historic, and I have no doubt that you're going to be successful in banning fur in Portland, think about the animal that you're going to dedicate your advocacy to, so that when things get tough or things get hard, or you sometimes think maybe I don't have enough time, just think back to him. Think back to your Dew and whoever that is. So tonight's agenda, it may seem long, but a lot of this is going to go very, very quickly. First, we're going to do welcome. So welcome, you guys. It's really nice to meet you, even though it's through video. That's done, so we can check that off our lists. We're going to do kind of just a brief overview of the City Council, the Portland legislative process, which is actually really unique, and I've never seen this before. So it's you guys are in a unique position, and I think an advantageous position to do something historic. Some do's and don'ts of lobbying. They may seem simple, but they're incredibly important. Advocacy toolkit or toolbox, a little bit about the fur industry, a little bit about the Fur NYC campaign, the Fur-Free NYC campaign we're running. Talk a little bit about the sales ban that or not sales ban, but the fur ban that you'll be working on. Some next steps, take questions, and then there's going to be kind of a small breakout session at the end. I wish I could obviously be there in person, but I'm all the way in New York City. So just a quick overview of kind of the way your city council government is set up. It's a commission government, which is actually the last one of any major city in the United States. It's incredibly a relic, but this does, in fact, I think, help for what you guys are going to be working on. Here in New York City, we have 51 council members and a mayor. That is a lot of people that we need to persuade. We have a lot of committees. We have a lot of things that we have to do in order to get a bill passed. In this case, you guys have a mayor, you have 4 commissioners, and you have an auditor. And the mayor and the commissioners, them together, those 5 make up your city council. That's it. You have 3 out of 5 people, or 4 out of 5 people, or hopefully 5 out of 5 people that you need to persuade that fur is bad and that you guys should end the sale of it and the manufacturing in Portland. And you guys are going to have yourself a law. It is going to take a lot of work, but it is really great that you have such a small legislative body that you have to lobby on. One of the things about your city council is you guys they meet about once a week, which gives you guys incredible access. And some of the things that we'll talk about is some of the things that you should be doing on a weekly or monthly basis. And part of it is kind of going to those weekly meetings and starting to learn and meet some of your council members. Two things with your city council, they pass two different things, ordinances and resolutions. Ordinances is basically the city giving a thumbs up and saying, yes, we support this. So like, I don't know, passing a resolution saying, yeah, we think that Trump should release his tax returns. It has no force of law. There's nothing that the city can do to enforce it, but it's basically a proclamation, the city saying, I endorse this. You guys could pass a resolution in support of New York City banning the sale of fur. So that's what a resolution is. An ordinance is, think of it as passing a law. It's a bill, it's an ordinance. This has the force of law. It goes into your municipal code, and this does get enforced with jail time or civil fines. This is what most of the things that you deal with in your daily life, they come from ordinances. There's also an emergency and a non-emergency version of an ordinance. That really just has to do from a procedural standpoint. Emergency ordinances don't need to go through two different hearings or public notices, and they go into effect immediately. Non-emergency is what a fur ban would look like, which would require certain steps in the legislative process. These are your targets. These are the people you need to persuade, these 5. As we go on and identify who's going to be hopefully the bill sponsor and going forward about how to lobby these folks, this is it. These are the folks that you need to persuade and you need to get the information in front of. There will be a tremendous amount of information that we will gather and the team on the ground will gather and get to you. You want to know these people very, very well. Like you would know a celebrity or know a professional baseball player if you're interested in baseball, whatever it is. You need to know about these folks so you can relate with them when you're meeting with them. This is your legislative process in Portland. We are right now in the pre-introduction stage, which means that there's a lot of work building a coalition, drafting the language, getting advocates, getting volunteers. All of this stuff is the pre-introduction stage. There's no ordinance, there's no bill. There is a proposed bill, but there is nothing currently sitting in the city council for their consideration. The step after getting everything organized is constituent advocacy, which is where all of you come into place. And you'll actually see here, there's multiple places where it says constituent advocacy. And the reason for that is because you guys are the most important people when it comes to this. The legislative process does not work and it does not happen without every single one of you in this room working to move a piece of legislation. It does not happen on its own. It does not happen overnight. It requires the force and the will of people, especially when you're talking about an industry that will spend money to oppose you. And so after the introduction stage, you have the ordinance will be introduced. Hopefully over the course of the next week, next month, you'll find one of those 5 people to introduce the ordinance or the bill. After that, you're going to need to do more lobbying. You're going to need to lobby to get the other council members, the other commissioners, and the mayor to support it. And then they will move to get the bill up for consideration. And like I said, your city council meets every single week. And these bills or these ordinances are put before for what's called the first reading. And that will be a public hearing. That's where all of you will come and testify in support of the bill and explain why you support it. And different organizations will come in and say why they support it. And you'll have experts come in and say why they support it. And then, of course, the fur industry is going to bust people in and try to get them to see or to testify in opposition of it. So this is where you guys really come into play from a public standpoint, is where they gather all the testimony from people in Portland. After that, there needs to be a period of time that passes. First readings don't happen immediately after. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, it could be never. It's usually, if the hearing goes well, the mayor or the city council will decide to have the bill come up for second consideration, which is a second reading, and then they will vote on it. There will be no public testimony. They will take written testimony up to the point that they vote. So it's important to submit written testimony as well. But this is where they actually decide to vote on it. After they vote, if you get a majority, so you just need 3 of the 5, although I know that most city councils that are this small usually like to work unanimously and use a consent calendar, but we don't need to go into that. But after they vote, if you have the majority of the council, it will then become law. And with a non-emergency, it will either be 30 days, or if the law stipulates a later phase in, it will come into force based on that. And then, of course, after that, we celebrate. And that is something I certainly would happily jump on a plane to come be with all of you the day that this comes into law. The one thing that's interesting is your mayor doesn't need to do anything. Typically, after a vote of a city council, it has to go to an executive branch to get signed. Here, your mayor is a part of the city council, so that process isn't necessary. I will tell you, every other city I've worked in, every other legislature, you have multiple hearings, multiple committees, multiple readings and votes and mayors. And so you guys have a very, very unique position of where you have 5 people that make all the decisions, and you have a very, very short, very simple legislative process. This is really exciting because I really do believe that something like this is not only possible, but can move relatively quickly if everything is set up correctly and you guys advocate in a way that is very positive and forthcoming. And so that leads me into the lobby do's and don'ts. Again, these may seem very, very simple, but I can tell you that I have made all of these mistakes. I've accidentally and in some instances been frustrated and I don't do this. And these are kind of these are the tips of the trade when you're dealing with elected officials and when you're dealing with getting legislation passed. You have to be, the most important thing is thinking about this as like a job interview or anything else that's incredibly important. We are entering an arena that animal advocacy is just starting to get involved with, which is legislation. And there is a decorum and there is a method to it. And when we go in and we don't operate within the bounds, we are seen as outsiders, and that's when legislation dies. So whenever you're lobbying, whether you're meeting with someone or you're meeting with the staff or you're meeting with a legislator or whatever you're doing, it's really important to establish your goals and your agenda. And what I mean by that is know what you're looking for before you go into a meeting. I mean, imagine if I came into this presentation and I didn't have anything prepared and I just kind of talked off the cuff. It wouldn't be something that was useful as much to all of you. So when you go in to meet with a councilman or with a commissioner or the mayor, or you're doing anything on this, make sure you know what your agenda is for a meeting or for a conversation and know what your goals are. Being prepared, but please know that you don't need to be an expert. I can tell you the intricacies of factory farming and the fur industry, and I know way too many stats, and there's a lot of information in my head that is because I have done this for many, many years. All of you sitting in this room, all you have to do is care. It's as simple as that, because these are your elected officials. They're here to represent you. And of course, you need to know a little bit about why you obviously support a ban on fur. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be able to cite things. So don't be intimidated by this idea that you need to know everything about the fur industry. That's what we're here for. That's what all of the folks that are working on this campaign are here for, is to be the experts. All of you just need to have, be willing to have those conversations. Listen well. Council members, elected officials like to talk. You can get a lot of information from them if you just let them run their mouths. And you'll learn a lot about them. You'll learn who has which position and why, and who you should talk to and who you shouldn't talk to, and what the opposition is saying and the lobbyists. They will divulge a ton of information if you allow them to do it. So make sure when you are talking to people that you're trying to lobby on, whether it's supporters or restaurants or businesses or whoever it is that you're lobbying on this bill, give them the opportunity to talk so you can learn a little bit about them, and make sure you take notes, especially when you're with your council members. Take a pen and paper, because they know you're going to hold them accountable for things that they say. And so it's really important to do that part. Be concise, patient, and respectful of their time. This is very, very important, because many of them, this is the first time this has ever been talked to them about, or they haven't really spent a lot of time considering it, and they have a lot on their plate, especially your commissioners. I've never seen in a city council where the legislative body is also kind of the executive branch of multiple departments. They are overwhelmed. I'm sure they're underpaid. And so have patience with them and really talk in concise notes. Don't go on and on and on about a bunch of different things. And be very, very respectful. If you have a 15-minute meeting with them, you have a 15-minute meeting with them. Don't try to extend that out. Remember, everything you do, you're building a relationship. This is really, really important, and I'll hit on this again. You're building a relationship that is going to last with this council member. This is not the only bill you will work on. There may be transportation issues, water issues, environmental issues, animal issues. There's so many things that we need to do to make this world a better place. And if you build a relationship with them, you'll be able to have easier conversations and be able to get them to vote in the way that you want them to in the future. So in the beginning stages on this bill, you're building a relationship. Treat it like you're courting someone that you want to date. Be the best version of yourself moving forward with them. Be honest and personable. Never, ever, ever lie. Never be dishonest. We are not the fur industry. We are not animal abusers. We do not need to resort to tactics like bullying and manipulating and lying because we have truth and justice on our side. That is what we have. We may not have the money, but we definitely have truth, and that's all we need. Sometimes it takes a little while to have to say the truth multiple times and at different volumes to get people to listen, but never, ever be dishonest. Always be personable as well. Make a specific and reasonable ask. Do not go into your council member's office and ask them to ban the consumption of meat in Portland. We're not there yet. Don't ask them to work on things that are not in front of the council's consideration. Don't ask them to do things that are outside their realm. Here, it's to either sponsor or to support whatever the bill number is. That's it. Don't ask them to support other things. Don't work on other bills. This is kind of a very specific thing, and it has to be a reasonable ask. Follow-up is important. Always find a reason to follow up with them. Whenever I'm lobbying with a council member, I always find a reason to follow up with them. And usually what it is they'll ask a question that I know the answer to, but it's not really a material fact to my lobbying. And I'll say, I don't really know the answer to that. And then I have a reason to follow up with them again. And then report back. This is really, really important because those of us who are the campaigners, when we hear things from council members, we can decipher that in a way that maybe you can't yet because you haven't been lobbying as long as some of us has. And so this is really important. So if your council member says something to you, make sure you come back to the campaign and say, this is what they said. It may not seem important to you, but in the context of maybe other conversations or other things, we will be able to hint or get a glimpse into which way they're leaning or what they're looking for. So this is very, very important, is to report back. Now, those are the do's. There's many more, but I feel like these are the most important. These are the don'ts. Not just avoid while lobbying. I will tell you that any of these things potentially could lead to killing a bill. I've seen constituents and I've seen supporters go in and with nothing but goodness in their heart do some things that are not kosher in the world of lobbying, and it's turned lawmakers completely off of a bill. And these are the ones: lie, mislead, and exaggerate. We don't need to do this. We are not animal abusers. We don't have to resort to their tactics. Showing excessive graphic footage. It is very important that people see the things that happen to animals. But there is a time, there's a place, and there is something that's considered too excessive. And so this is very important to think about, is that we know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we know that a small glimpse of a video showing animals being tortured may be enough to get them. You don't have to get them to watch Meet Your Meat or Dominion. We really need to make sure that we don't go overboard with the graphic footage because people will put it off. This one is not necessarily regards to you. This is more for other lobbying. You're lucky enough that every single one of these people that are targets for this, they're all your council or they're all your commissioners and they're your mayor. You can contact any of them. But in every other city that I've ever worked in and every other in the state, you typically only have one person who represents you. Never contact somebody who is not your elected official unless you're specifically told to by a campaigner. In this case, you don't have to worry about that, but that's very important for state level and county level stuff as well. Don't inundate the staffers with a lot of information. Don't be overly negative. Talk about the positive, why it's good, why they should do this. We don't need to get into being the negative side. We're the good side. Following up is very important with them. If you say you're going to follow up, make sure you follow up. Don't overload an issue. Don't overload a meeting with too many issues and talking about too many things. Never confront them, never threaten them, never pressure them, and never beg. We don't need to use or resort to these tactics. Again, truth is on our side. And then don't expect them to be specialists on this. For many of them, they have no idea what the fur industry is. For many of them, they have no idea what you're talking about. This is their first time that they've been introduced to this, And so keep that in your mind. Think about the first time anybody talked to you about an animal cruelty issue. It's overwhelming. It's sad. For many of us, we had to come to terms with the fact that we participated in it for many years. And so be sympathetic, be understanding, and don't expect them to know the intricacies of these things. Here are kind of the basics when it comes to your advocacy toolbox. Again, building a relationship. You want these people to think of you when they see you, to smile, to know your name, to know that you are going to contact them on bills and things that they're working on, that you show up to their rallies, their fundraisers. Think about this as a relationship that you're building with them. Emails, phone calls, make them personal. You guys have all gotten the action alerts from many of the organizations that I've worked for telling you to submit this action alert. The great thing here is that we are going to be in the position to really tailor this in a very personal way because there's 5 targets and there's not a lot of people individually that we have to reach out to. And so in this instance, when you make a phone call and you send an email, which a lot of these things we're not ready to do, I want to remind you that the advocacy toolkit, this is for when a bill is introduced. We have some work to do before we get a bill introduced, but until then, these are the things that you're going to be asked to do once there's the bill number. So an email that's personal, tell your story, why you want them to support it. Talk about a dog that you had that you can't imagine having these pains inflicted about them. Tell them about the first time you saw a video. Talk to them about why it's good for Portland. Tell them a personal story about why this is what you want. Same thing with your phone call. Social media is very, very important, but we have to use it very, very wisely. We have to do it very responsibly. And what that means is there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to ask you to do and post on once the campaign goes probably more public and you're really starting to urge these council members and urge folks to do things. Using hashtags, similar hashtags, using branded photos, making sure that you're not using things that are outside the bounds of what the campaign has approved, because messaging is very, very important. And you want to make sure that everyone is saying the same thing, because if all of you are saying the same thing, then the council member is going to get that message. If we're all saying different things, the council members are not going to know what the talking points are on this. And so think about it as social media needs to be used as a uniform voice, and we will show you how to do that when it comes that time. A great one to look at is the For Free NYC hashtag. We've, I think, done a really great job of getting advocates to stay on message, stay on point, use branded imagery, and using the same talking points. Handwritten letters go a long way. It's amazing how we've kind of come full circle. I was talking the other day with someone about how, like, I have a cell phone, but when people call me, I wonder to myself, like, why is somebody calling me? I like text messaging. But handwritten letters and kind of these personal touches are really, really important. So when it comes time to contact these council members, taking the time to write a card out or do something handwritten is, I think, makes a really big impact. And I have seen it firsthand. I've seen council members run out of their office and go, oh my God, I got this really wonderful letter from one of my constituents, despite the fact that I pushed in 300 phone calls and 300 emails to them. So think about it from a personal standpoint. In-person meetings is something that's going to need to happen as well. Oftentimes you'll meet with staff, oftentimes you'll meet with elected officials. It's kind of a give or take. Just remember, staff is just as important as an elected official. Never treat anybody in their office, whether it's the desk person or it's the janitor or it is somebody that is in there that is an intern. You never know who those people are going to be. You never know what power they have in the office. We are going to treat people all respectfully, and just know that every single one of them we have to approach with nothing but building a relationship and candor and trust and honesty. These meetings are also incredibly important because you're going to be able to plead your case personally and make a specific ask. Will you support this bill? Will you co-sponsor this bill? Will you introduce this bill? And the messaging that is for each of these council members will change, and this is what the campaign will do to make sure you know what they are. And then, of course, earned media. This is going to be really important once there's a bill. Op-eds and letters to the editor that are going to need to be pinned in the local papers from all of you. If there's an article that comes out, we want to flood the paper with letters to the editor in support of that article. If there's a bad article that comes out, we want to flood them with LTEs and op-eds explaining why that article is wrong. And so this is another thing that we're going to ask a lot of you to do as well. And then, of course, media events on the fur issue. whether it's a rally or a protest or other different types of demonstrations. It's a really great way to get the media there to talk about our issue. And this is something that's going to be really important to the campaign as well. So these are really kind of the main advocacy tools that your guys have in your belt. These are going to be the things that are going to be asked of you over the course of the next couple months once the bill is introduced. So, fur. I think there's no other easy way to say it other than it's a product of extreme cruelty. Fur is horrible. It's horrendous. I sometimes wonder if there's anything that's more disgusting and unnecessary in our world at this time. And one of the people that are working on this campaign, Joshua Ketcher, he wrote recently this phenomenal book about animals that are used in fashion. Because that's what this is. I mean, it's animals that are being used and being exploited and being killed for fashion. And I really thought that the quote that the dedication that he put in his book is incredibly powerful. And that the fashion mausoleum may be spectacular, still and full and soft and exquisite things. But we mustn't mistake the stillness for peace, nor the softness for goodness. Despite the decor, there is little sympathy for the fashion's dead, nor mercy for its doomed. I dedicate this book to every animal whose body has vanished into a silent fashion object. You did not die quietly. You did not go prettily. You did not go willingly. This dedication for me is kind of that reminder of what we're working for and why it is so important that we put a nail in the coffin of this industry, is because millions and millions of animals die every single day, hundreds of millions every single year for something as simple as a fur trim or a fur jacket or an UGG boot. With that, I know this is going to be a little bit hard. This is, I think, a very good example of something that is not overly graphic, but very important in this video. I've already talked with the producers. We had a firm here create it for us. This was the video. It's a 2-minute video that talks about the fur industry. It is the arguments that we use to show that the fur industry shouldn't be around. And it's something that we're going to be able to tailor. If you guys choose to use it in Portland, we'll be able to pull out the New York stuff and give you guys this footage.
Meet Bailey. Bailey was born on a fur farm. She has never touched grass. Bailey will be kept in this same cage until she's skinned for her pelt. It takes 11 Baileys to make a single coat. And that's not unusual. In fact, the fur industry kills over 100 million animals every year. 85% of them, like Bailey, live their entire lives on fur farms. Many suffering from anxiety-induced psychosis and sometimes even cannibalizing their cage mates in response to confinement until it's their turn to be killed in one of a variety of cruel ways. The other 15 to 20% are caught with brutal traps, the use of which is practically unregulated. Stuck in these barbaric contraptions for days at a time, dehydrated and desperate animals will thrash around to the point of breaking their own bones and sometimes even chew off their own limbs in their attempts to escape. That's a lot of suffering. It's also a lot of damage to the environment. According to the World Bank, fur production is one of the world's 5 worst industries for toxic metal pollution and uses formaldehyde and chromium, both of which have been linked to cancer. Fur farming creates ammonia runoff that leads to toxic eutrophication within our own water supply, and studies show it's much worse for the environment than faux fur and other textile alternatives. And the most important and saddest fact of all, it's all unnecessary. Over 1,000 of fashion's most respected designers, brands, and retailers have already moved on from fur, and a majority of New York City voters support a sales ban on fur apparel. Join the movement. Go to furfreenyc.com to see how you can help.
That is why we're going to be doing the work that we're going to be doing, whether it's in New York City or in Portland. It is about them. There are so many reasons why the fur industry should no longer be in existence, whether it's the animal torture, the environmental pollutions, the lack of a necessity when it comes to the fashion industry itself. And these are going to be the arguments that we use to make sure that cities like Portland and New York pass a ban. So again, you guys are going to be working on an ordinance. It can be called a bill, a couple other things you can call it, but that's what that is. It's not a resolution, it's an ordinance. Based on the text that's currently been drafted, again, this could change, but it will prohibit the manufacturing, the sale, distribution, trade, import, or export of fur. It's actually a stricter law than what we're doing here in New York City. And it's important to note just from the standpoint of, there's one other thing is you guys will be the first cold weather city to ban this. You'll be the first city outside of CA or out of California to ban this. And I can't tell you from the standpoint of momentum that this would help in New York City. We are up against a very, very, very big fight here. New York City is the fashion capital of the United States, if not potentially one of the fashion capitals of the world. The fur industry has already spent over $1 million fighting us here with TV ads and misleading pamphlets and flyers and bullying council members, and they've hired two of the biggest lobby firms here. We are up against a huge challenge, and something like this, the work that you guys are going to do, not only is it incredible for Portland, but it is going to set a precedent and really help us here in New York City and the other cities that we're going to be introducing this type of legislation. I also just kind of wanted folks to think about, based on, this is probably one of my favorite quotes. Of course, it's from Gandhi, and I know that many of you have seen this before, but a small group of determined and like-minded people can change the course of history. I have been a part of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of campaigns. And I will tell you that the size of the campaign doesn't necessarily matter. It is the heart and it is the tenacity of the very people that are fighting on it. I have zero doubt that if you guys put your energy into this, that you can make Portland the next city that bans fur. And I can tell you from many, many years of experience that one individual can make a huge difference. One individual can be the difference between something passing and not. And so I hope that all of you can kind of take away one thing, is that each of you have the power to make this happen. And together I have no part of me that thinks that it's not. And I'm going to be here as a resource in any way that I can. And I can't tell you that, how lucky you guys are to have the organizers that are in the room that are working on this. So anytime that you feel like we're outnumbered, outpersoned, outspent, just remember this, because this is true, that really a small group of people can change the course of history. And I have no doubt that that's what's going to happen. So one of the things I did want to just walk through really quickly is I wanted to show you guys the fur-free campaign that we have here in New York City. So you can kind of see some of the things that are going to be coming down the pipeline for you if the campaign there chooses to use some of the similar tactics. But I also want to show you the website because it's a really incredible use. I can't take all the credit for it because of the fact that many, many people have participated in making this website what it is. But I also want you guys to know that this is a really, really great tool for information about the fur industry. So the best thing to do for any of you that want to learn more and have information for moving forward whenever you meet with a council member or you're going to be lobbying on it is to go to the blog. And you're basically going to have all the information you could ever want. This is an op-ed that we recently wrote about kind of the tactics and the bullying methods and the Trump style of lobbying that they're using. Here's a letter that we have from veterinary professionals, and this is one of the things that I would recommend you guys do is to get vets on board. This is a poll we did, which is pretty incredible to think about, that 75% of people in New York City support a sales ban on fur. And this is the press release that goes around it. Fur Industry Lies, to me, is probably the most important page, and this was drafted and this was made by the gentleman that wrote the book, Joshua Ketcher. It has every single piece of information you could ever want and more when it comes to the lies that the industry is going to tell. And these are the rebuttals. They will say that fur is sustainable, and these are lies. They will use false advertising. They will say that it is environmentally friendly and natural. Fur could be nothing, nothing different other than natural when it comes to the toxics that they use for all of these reasons: fossil fuels, petrochemicals, hazardous health, greenhouse gases, water pollution, toxic tanning, invasive species, all of this that comes from cited materials, all the information you need. And then, of course, one of the best arguments the fur industry is humane and well-regulated. Obviously, we know that that's not true. That's one of the things the video shows. And it also talks about how we can counter these arguments, and also documentation, investigations, all of it. Protecting animals, it limits consumer choice. This is one thing we hear a lot here in New York City: is don't take away my choices, don't take away my right to wear whatever I want. They really attack fur, faux fur, and make it seem like that's what we're advocating for, when in fact for us, we are not advocating that people wear faux fur. I would personally like to see faux fur go away just like fur. But at the end of the day, this is truly a false choice, one or the other. And so this is the arguments to make against that. It also talks about a lot of the faux fur that's going on. So anytime that they say, well, there's going to be job loss, well, actually, there's a lot of innovation that's being done when it comes to synthetic textiles. This talks about how out of touch they are when it comes to how millennials and people of younger generations are moving away from this and don't want fur. And then this is one thing that we get a lot. This is probably not something that you'll get a huge amount of. There's about 1,100 jobs that they say that they'll lose here in New York City, and this is the counter to that. And then also that it's a legacy. So this is going to be a really great use for you. And of course, any materials that we've created in New York City, you guys are welcome to. But the blog is always going to be a great place for you guys to find information, quotes, anything like that. Here's another one that talks about how many animals it takes to make one fur coat, which is actually quite staggering. When you think about one fur coat can take up to 100 chinchillas, 14 otters, 30 possums, 100 squirrels. And when you think about the individual lives that are taken for really a disgusting fashion statement. So this is, again, I think a really, really phenomenal tool. I can't take credit for it. This is a lot of work from other folks. So this is something that is going to be at your guys' ready whenever you need to use it. So with that, I hope that you guys have time. I don't know if you guys do, but one of the things that I really recommend, let me go back real quick, sorry, is one of the things that we do here in New York City. We have 51 city councils, and we're trying to break up into what's called the district leader program and have people in each district. I know Portland has 5 neighborhoods. And one of the things that I would really recommend, based on, for some of you, I don't know where you guys live, but really trying to start having some conversations about what you can do in your districts and really become almost like district leaders or neighborhood leaders or whatever you would want to call them. And so this is something that I would just recommend you guys do. I think there's enough people in the room that you could almost have a one-on-one session with some of the organizers. These are something that I think is important. What is your elevator pitch? If someone asks you why I shouldn't wear fur or why I should support a fur ban, what is that reason? And hopefully the organizers there will be able to help you walk through creating your own elevator pitch. Have this rehearsed, have this in your back pocket, because when you talk to people on the street, you're not going to have a lot of time. And so you're going to be able to execute that elevator pitch in a really meaningful way. And this is kind of a task that I think is really important, because this is very, very important for the campaign. If you guys take a moment and find in each of the Southeast, Southwest, and the Northeast and Northwest, and the northern part of Portland, each of you can take one on your own, or if there's enough for multiple of you to work on this, find 3 meeting places, because it's going to be really important to hold events in these different places and have more grassroots meetings and talk about this bill and what the impact is and get people in your neighborhoods to do this. So find 3 places that you can have these types of meetings, whether it's a library or whatever it is. 5 businesses. All of you shop somewhere. All of you go to certain restaurants. All of you have your clothing store. All of you have your favorite kombucha shop, whatever it is you guys have in Portland, in your donut shop. What are these places that we can reach out to get them to support this bill and endorse this legislation? And this will be really, really helpful. If all of you did this, this would give us maybe 30 businesses that we could then reach out to and get to the magic number that we want. And then also look for events. I would love for all of you together to find 5 events over the course of the next week or next couple months that we can table at that we will be able to collect signatures at, that we will be able to talk with people in those neighborhoods about why they should support it, and get them to be activated as well, whether it's to attend a meeting or whatever that looks like. So, and the other thing is, think back to that animal that you're dedicating this advocacy to, and what can you commit to? What is a promise that you can make to the animals and also to this campaign, whether it's an hour a week, 2 hours a week, 5 hours a month, whatever it is, what are you going to be able to commit? Because the organizers in this room need to know what assets they have. And I can tell you that if all of you give just a little bit over the course of the next month, in a few months from now, we are going to be celebrating Portland as becoming one of the first cities to ban fur. And it's going to be incredible. It will be historic. And I can't thank all of you enough for the work that you have done, the work that you will be doing. And even though I'm about 3,000 miles away, it is really, truly, truly an honor to be in the same army fighting for animals right next to you guys. So thank you guys for your time. I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions that you have, and you have my contact information if you ever need to reach out. So thank you.